Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am not Matt Murphy. I am Cameron Smith. You can read my stuff over at the Tennessean, over at AL.com. I am a regular fill-in here at Super Talk 99.7.
Yay.
The level of excitement is through the roof on this Friday afternoon. Matt is not here. Matt just sometimes calls me and says, I just feel like dancing, and it just gets awkward. And I say, you just want me to fill in for you again, right? Said, yeah. So I am here, and I'm happy to be with you guys. We got a great show over the next 3 hours. Our leadoff batter is Peter Goodwin, CEO of Groove Life. If you haven't heard of Groove Life, I'm confident you've seen its products on people's hands, around their waists. Do I have you guessing? We'll also have Cheryl Brown from the Williamson County Republican Party. We'll probably talk about this bud not being for you. We'll talk about gun issues, some of the things in the Tennessee legislature. We've got a lot going on, a lot happening. But right now, we're going to go straight to Peter. Peter, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Cameron. Thanks for having me.
So for the uninitiated, what's Groove Life?
Yeah, so Groove Life is an outdoor accessory brand. We sell wallets, we sell belts, rings, watch bands, and other accessories.
So tell me about these rings, because I see these rings everywhere.
Yeah, so everybody kind of knows about the silicone ring. I think nowadays, it's
Yeah,
for
sure.
anybody that's active or whatever. So kind of our claim to fame was making them breathable back in 2017 and kind of been off to the races ever since. So we sell a host of different types of rings from NFL. We do a lot of licensing, do work with a lot of pro athletes. Pretty much anybody that works with their hands or active doesn't like a metal ring.
So one of the things that we want to bring, so when he says breathable, look, it's the South. And we know how sweaty this stuff gets. And during the summer, you know what I'm talking about? It's hot. Your hand, you get that it just feels like your hand's sweating, because you know what? Your hand's sweating.
And you have a rubber
Yes.
gasket on your finger.
Yes. And great product. They're all over the place, but we're not necessarily just talking about the product. What the reason that I asked Peter to come on was in light of the, I don't know if it's a Mark Sanchez butt fumble by Bud Light, what it is. But man, this has been in cycle, and I've got a column that is dropping today. And one of the things that I realized is that Anheuser-Busch had lost about $5 billion in market cap based on this little incident. And the Bud Light vice president of marketing said this. She was on a podcast and was talking about the Bud Light brand. Everybody knows what Bud Light is at this point.
This is before it
Yeah,
dropped, right?
this is before the Dylan Mulvaney March Madness breakfast at Tiff. I don't know what that was, but that thing that happened. She said this on a podcast about the Bud Light brand. She said representation is sort of at the heart of evolution, which had me lost for a minute, because I'm like, you sell cheap beer, right? She followed on and she said, you've got to see people who reflect you in the work. And we had this hangover. No pun intended. I mean, Bud Light had been kind of a brand of fratty, kind of out of touch humor. And it was really important we had another approach. Well, you've got a growing company. One of my dear friends, Nate Griffin, is over there now helping y'all build your brand. When you build that brand, what are you trying to convey to consumers? And how do you do that in a way where this is a polarized market? You've got people with strong feelings all over the place. What's your approach to get them in the door?
Yeah, in light of pretty much we look at what other large corporations are doing and do the opposite.
I like it.
Like not pissing off the entire consumer base at once. So, Groove, we have core values of serving people, inspiring, adventure, and reflecting God. So we try to do everything through that. But our core demographic is middle America, absolutely. People that work with their hands and just active people. We were started in Alaska, and then we moved down here 6 years ago. But I think it's a tightrope. During we're during Black Lives Matter, and that, it's just kind of like whatever
all the causes coming
all the
out,
causes
right?
coming out. It's you have your the drones or the trolls kind of activist trolls kind of like hitting up every brand.
Yeah, of
especially
course.
brands like us that kind of like this is what we stand for. We're not we actually have a soul. We have 200 Americans that work for us. Like we're very, very pro-family. We're very much, we don't shy away from what we stand for. I don't care.
I've been to your offices. You have great dogs that hang out there.
Lots of dogs,
There's
yeah.
family. I mean, like, I feel like when I walk into your office, at first it's an old school. So I'm like, am I going to school? But then I'll tell you what, it's a testament to a company and I'm not just saying this because I know Peter and Nate and other folks that live over or that work over there. They may live there too. But when I walked in that office for the first time, I saw a lot of smiles. I saw a lot of people that were very excited about the work they were doing. And one, I want to say, hey, that's important, right? At a time where you mentioned you got a lot of corporate soullessness, like lack of soul. I could tell the folks like connected with what you guys were trying to do. But like you said, the trolls come after that environment and they see, hey, well, this is a company. They're growing. You guys it's based in Spring Hill, right?
Correct.
So you're growing down there. They see that. They want basically you to cheerlead things that you may not agree with. How do you...
Or cancel us. I mean,
or cancel.
Some people hate us. So we get that all the time. And we look, our whole company... sort of based off my faith values of just, loving people. That's one of our core values is people loving. So how do that's all people, by the way, not just people that believe what we believe.
Right.
So, yeah, so it's a challenge, especially when people are, seem to be a little bit unreasonable. Like I have to believe what they believe, but they don't have to believe what I believe.
Right.
It's like,
it's a one-way street.
It's yeah. So, I mean, we all know this. I mean, the listeners here, this isn't new. But navigating a company that's growing, it's a little more of a challenge. But we're very clear on who our customer is, and really our customer is us. So it's not, we don't have to do, we do demographic studies and figure out who our customer is, but it's like at the end of the day, we're kind of serving pro-American, pro-family. We're very big on Second Amendment. We're just big on America. Like,
right.
What are the American values that built this country?
Have you considered something less offensive?
Yeah.
It seems like that these days.
It is opposite, right? You'd think, we
I
love
think the
people and we love
swastika is in
America.
public domain now.
Oh, is it? Man, that's too bad. I was going to try to trademark that.
Well, so on the super text line, 615-737-9986, you guys know the deal coming in on here. 5091, he made a good point, said, how about corporate America build their brands on the golden rule? Take no sides and then treat people like you want to be treated.
Correct.
And it sounds like from you and I talking before the show, that's very much your mindset is one that's sort of anchored in the way Jesus treated people.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I'd love to. I think everybody, especially a lot of your listeners, probably agree that America is considered a Christian country, whatever that kind of means. But the basis of our founding fathers, there's a lot of belief. Now,
Sure.
Franklin versus Adams versus Washington, there's definitely some different thoughts on different things. But for the most part, there was like a recognition of some type of higher power and creator beyond us.
Absolutely.
And there was like natural law and don't mess with the natural law. So anyway, but the basis of Christianity, for anybody that doesn't know, it's not super complicated. It's like love God, love your neighbor. Your neighbor is people.
Yeah.
So if you do those things, you'll kind of fulfill all the law. So that's kind of how we look at Groove. Even our employees, we don't just hire people that have our exact faith values. We have people that have absolute different faith values, Buddhists and people that don't have any faith. But kind of one thing I say is when you can't work here, you don't have to have my faith values, but you do have to love people. Like you have to.
Yeah.
Right. So like I don't think it's against the law to make people love people to hire them. You can't.
It's not.
Yeah. And again, that's probably what you see. Like a lot of people, I have lots of younger millennials that have different viewpoints and a lot of older guys that are just very conservative. But we all like love each other. That's the basis of what we're doing. So we're there to serve people and reflect God's love to people. And that's kind of when people do have purpose at Groove. We're selling silly trinket sort of things. You know, I mean, our stuff is great, lifetime warranty.
Well, I can tell you from the super text line, I didn't let everybody know what was going on right off the bat. I love my Groove ring.
Cool.
I wear a Groove Life ring every day. I'm a mechanic.
Yeah.
Like it's not, none of them are saying, oh, it's a silly little trinket. They're saying, hey, this is actually pretty great.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, that's just from us just talking here, and they're already sort of saying, hey, this is the thing. But how in a culture that attacks certain values, that says, well, family doesn't really matter. It's just whatever you want. Like, it's moral relativism, right? It's like everything's fine. And you're trying to build a business with people with different values, different views. How do you navigate that without getting angry? Like, without being frustrated that people are saying, hey, well, here's a target, right? Here's somebody that's doing it in a way that we might not do it, so let's come after them. Yeah. How do you stay calm when you're interacting with folks?
I think knowing the game you're playing, I mean, it matters. So, like, even the people that are attacking us matter. They are people, and, you know, whether it's the transgender agenda or whatever, some other crazy, you know, some liberal agenda of, you know, name it.
Right.
The people underlying thing is like, we have different views, but they matter. As a human being, they matter. So I think that helps when you feel attacked. I mean, you know, when you get punched in the face, it is a human being that punched you in the face. It still hurts, and it's still, you have to be smart, and you can't, you know, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot. But I think just at the basis of like knowing that people matter, our customers, and here's what I always say to my people when we hire them, and just in general, is like, we sell things and people like our things, and God likes people, and our goal in life is to love people. So we're in the business of people and bringing order to chaos in their lives, you know, in the small way, because this world is unraveling. It always has been unraveling. It'll always continue to unravel, but there's microcosms of order that you see in the marketplace. Chick-fil-A is a great example of that. Like, you know, who's the Chick-fil-A demo? It's soccer moms. They have the most chaotic lives ever. My wife's one. It's just like kids running everywhere, and they can go to Chick-fil-A, and it's like this five minutes of
island.
order, you know. And I always say, you know, liberals might, you know, they might be like, I hate Chick-fil-A, or hashtag, you know, cancel Chick-fil-A, but they're in that line getting a Chick-fil-A sandwich over McDonald's because they serve them well and they bring order. So that's kind of the universal language to human beings, is what brings order in my life, and love and respect and great customer service. All those things transcend all these agendas that we kind of secretly hold. But as far, going back to Bud Light, I mean, talk about just, I think they just went about it the wrong way. I mean, in my opinion, I try not to judge anything immediately, because it tends to be out of emotion, you know, and I don't know if you I'm old enough now to know.
Yeah, I've learned at 41, I'm sort of like, you know, I should probably not react off the cuff. This isn't going to work out
There's a lot
well.
of texts that are unsent still. But, you know, not understanding who their core customer is, I mean, it's detrimental to the bottom line. The problem is some of these corporations are so big, they're almost too big to fail. It was good to hear that she got fired, not because she pushed her agenda, but because she just didn't serve the customer. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, we're a business, and we're serving our customers. And if your customers are selling dresses to men, then good for you. But, like, serve them well. You know what I mean? You probably shouldn't do a campaign for, you know, heterosexual women. You know what I mean? Like, that you're not going to serve your core customer. So,
well, it's ignoring the core customer. And it cracked me up. Matt Murphy said this on his show. He said that the key, you know who's the perfect demographic for Bud Light? Kid Rock.
And that was great. I saw the Twitter.
I mean, it's like Kid Rock is Bud Light, right?
Yeah,
and so instead of him being the guy that's holding the beer, he's the guy that's shooting the beer.
But they hate Kid Rock and everything he stands for. And I don't know if the problem is in these corporations, and I think Elon Musk is that you kind of have these microcosms of or not just groups inside of these large corporations that are kind of activists.
Yeah.
And they kind of have free reign to do. So they represent the brand, but it's probably not what the shareholders want or need. Because I mean, ultimately, a large company like that they're beholden to the shareholders. So to do what they did was criminal to the shareholders in a sense. But Kid Rock, that was, I saw a bunch of Twitter responses to him. You know, oh, we get it, Kid Rock. You hate trans people. And it was like they even, you know, in Kid Rock, I know he's a showman. So he's in
Right.
the entertainment business. Let's like, who are we talking to? Who are we talking about? But could he have done it better? I don't know. Maybe not. But I think what he's saying is, don't throw your agenda down my throat, and don't push this. And I think for a lot of conservative people, Christian people, just people that value family, it's like, I don't want my kids indoctrinated into your BS. I don't believe in this. Are trans people allowed to do what they can do? Yes, they're Americans. They can believe what they want to believe. They can dress how they want to believe. We should love them as individuals. Anybody that's, we're not. I've made bad decisions before, and they don't think it's a bad decision. But you're 40. Like, half the decisions you made in your life, you're like, that was dumb.
Yep.
And I believe wholeheartedly in it. But so everybody's on their own journey. But knowing that. What was I saying about Kid Rock? I was trying to tie it back to him.
Well, Kid Rock, when he's on your mind.
He hates trans people. He doesn't. He probably loves trans people. He's probably got gay friends. He's probably just like the norm. Like most people have person. Microcosm of in the United States. Like most people have friends.
A broad spectrum of friends.
Very broad.
Well, hey, we need to take a break real quick. Hold that thought. We're going to take a break real quick. We'll come back with Peter Goodwin, CEO of Groove Life. I love the Super Talk text line talking all about their rings. I got one gentleman just bought a Groove Life ring at Buc-ee's. I mean, talk about that.
Go Buc-ee's.
That overlay. This is Cameron Smith filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back, folks. I am Cameron Smith, and you are talking on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. You can follow me at @DCameronSmith on Twitter. Join the conversation over there. Hit the Super Text line. We have Peter Goodwin, CEO of Groove Life. And man, I didn't realize so many people that listen to the station have Groove Life rings and belts. We've been talking a little bit about the culture, the Bud Light thing, brand representation. I actually don't think the VP was fired yet. I think the issue has been they kind of got themselves between a rock and a hard place, right? They've said, here's the constituency and customer base we want. Here's the one we've got. Mm-hmm. And I think what you said about too big to fail. Mm-hmm. We're trying to serve all demographics. Mm-hmm. Well, then are you really targeting any, right? And it may shock you to know that Bud Light is not great beer.
Really?
and instead of really focusing, so I did this. You're gonna laugh. I Googled tasting notes for Bud Light, and obviously the reaction was very negative. Mm. But that goes to the point: is making products consumers want,
right,
and they're loyal to.
Right.
So a company like Disney,
right,
who can take these positions, says, I have built a product that customers want and are loyal to.
Right.
And so they're going to still watch ESPN, even if they don't agree with my values, right?
Right.
Bud Light, there are thousands of beer alternatives.
Right.
So in terms of Groove Life, and as y'all are building and growing down in Spring Hill, tell me like what your core constituency is, because, you know, here we are saying, well, hey, Bud Light, you missed the boat here. Well, what's the boat that you want people to get on with Groove Life?
Yeah. Yeah, the core customer is, 35, probably 25 to 45, just middle American family, active people. We speak to that demographic pretty shamelessly. Very much outdoor focused hunting is a big part of our brand. I started Groove as a hunting guide in Alaska as a side project, and so and a pilot is up there as well. So yeah, that's kind of our core demographic. And two, we struggle with this internally with our own team because a lot of people on the creative team aren't hunters, or a lot of them don't have kids. They're kind of living in Nashville doing that thing,
The creative thing. I don't know what it is, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, no creatives. So no, they're great, but you can talking with Nate, our new brand guy. It's like, we got to stay true to who is our core demographic. It's a family. It's faith, family, sacrifice, these kind of things that make up our brand, and don't deviate from that, because you can chase the hot topic, and you can try to be
chase the hooks.
Chase the hooks. I think the bottom line is Bud Light, they had a lot of loyal people because of what the brand represented, even though their beer tasted like crap. I mean, you drink enough crappy beer, it probably all tastes the same. But I think for a smaller brand, you kind of have to have a great product and resonate with your customer.
Right.
Whereas when you're bigger, you can kind of have crappy products and people will still buy them because they're
used to it.
Yeah. And they love the ads back in the day or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see where they go from here.
Yeah, I think, what's funny is the idea of fratty beer. That's the reason people drink Bud Light, is they tried it in college and they didn't try to find a better beer.
That's right.
And they just kept doing the same thing. And so now to tell those people, literally in the reviews, a lot of what I was seeing was, well, it reminds me of college and fun times and things like that. Right. And so they're literally gutting the nostalgia that drives a lot of their base. Yeah, right? And that to me is just, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah, I think they could have, even if they came out with like a very feminine woman at the beach representing the brand, it would have, it wouldn't have hit the demo.
Right, right.
Maybe not as, like offensive, but whatever.
Well, we got to take a break. We're coming back with Peter Goodwin, CEO of Groove Life. I'm Cameron Smith. I'm not Peter Goodwin. And this is Super Talk 99.7.
Good afternoon. It is 12:30, and I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. We'll have weather for you on the way. Suspected military secrets leaker Jack Teixeira has been hit with federal charges that collectively carry a maximum of 15 years in prison. He made his first court appearance this morning, less than 24 hours after he was taken into custody. The Biden administration and abortion medication manufacturer Danco are asking the U.S. Supreme Court to step in now before restrictions on the availability of mifepristone takes effect tomorrow. That is a continuing story. We'll stay on top of it for you. The Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research says that they found a biomarker for the disease, a misfolded protein that can be used to determine if a person has Parkinson's. This could be the next step in developing more accurate and easier tests to diagnose the disease and could rapidly accelerate the research to find a way to treat it. That is the latest news. Weather is on the way. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
we are now going heavy metal. I have with me, and who is me? I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy. I have Peter Goodwin with me, CEO of Groove Life, and we've been talking about, in this crazy culture, how do you market to your consumers? How do you engage your consumers? How do you try to make choices consistent with your values when everyone else is trying to jam their values down your throat? Peter's been really great on a lot of those answers. You can join us on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. It's an amazing number of you that have Groove Life rings and belts and all kinds of stuff. So that's really, really cool.
Sounds like the branding is going quite well.
Yeah, you're doing the brand thing right. Apparently, you have connected with your customers in ways that Bud Light is challenged to do right now. Well, to the point, let's wrap that up, and then we'll talk about a couple of other things. The real issue is not transgender, and this type of thing. It's don't lose your core customer. Don't say they don't matter. Don't say, because it really shows just this disdain. And it sort of started with Hillary Clinton's basket of deplorables, where folks are like, hey, wait a minute. You really don't like me.
Right.
You don't want me. And to say, well, our business is fratty and out of touch, that's kind of right in terms of like where a lot of it started. But
good times in those
yes,
frat houses.
A lot of good times. And then the out of touch humor. Well, yeah, like an attractive woman shooting a bear out of a cannon into the ocean, and when it splashes, Kid Rock emerges holding a beer.
With who?
Right, exactly, right? These are folks that are saying, I just want to relax. Exactly. I want to relax a little bit, have a beer with my buddies, hang out, and the elite are like, well, let us tell you about
what virtue is, and we'll
right.
Tell you what,
And that's what people hate. That's what they hate.
They hate it.
They will forget Dylan Mulvaney tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
But they won't forget Bud Light saying, we would like better than the customer we have.
Right. Yeah.
And that to me is just painful. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about, everybody's seeing the economic craziness, all that's going on, banking turmoil, inflation. Where do you see Groove Life growing? What are your kind of goals for the company? Like what do you want to see when you think 5 years, 10 years down the road for your company? What do you want to see?
Yeah. Well, first we want to survive this next upcoming financial apocalypse. No, I don't. I say that lightly. I say that to my CFO all the time, and he's like, ah. But yeah, I think just being smart, not being in debt is a big deal. We're bootstrapped. We don't have any outside funding, so we don't really have any outside pressure. We don't have any debt, so we're here to make what we need to make long term. We want to be the Patagonia of accessories, so we don't really, Patagonia, whether you agree with their values or not, doesn't really matter. They're true to their values, so we want to stay true to our values, who we are, even if it puts us out of business, so be it. Or if we grow to be $1 billion company, so be it. Doesn't really matter. We're just here to have fun and love people and grow smart. I have a lot of just kind of peers in the space that have taken on money and they've grown exponentially. The problem with that is now we're kind of going into a little bit more.
It's kind of hard to find that money now.
Yeah, hard to find that money, and then the customers. My groceries are double. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So are people where are they going to spend money on? So in interest rates. So yeah, we're here for the long term. We're trying to build a 50-year business, and you do that by really just blocking and tackling, loving people, making great products that last a lifetime. That's us.
How about tell me what? I know this sounds kind of weird, but what's your R&D like when you want to say, okay, we're crushing these rings. They're great. It's humid. It's sweaty down here. People love these things. They love the belts. Okay, but what's the next thing?
Yeah. Yeah, we launched the wallet last year. It's going really well. We do watch bands. We have some other products coming down the pipe. But, we just honestly, it's me. I'm in charge of product dev. That's about the only thing I'm in charge of.
Okay, well, then I got a great guy here to talk about that. What do you, when you look around and say, hey, I want to, and I'm not talking about anything in the pipeline now. I'm saying when you think about what's next for the company, what are you looking for? What's your process?
Yeah. Honestly, it's economic. So what does already have velocity in the marketplace? Like with belts, everyone wears belts. We didn't have to try to educate the populace on what
What
belts
is
are.
a belt?
Yeah, what is a belt? We just had to make it better, so we took all the belts and we were like, what if you didn't ever have to even adjust your belt? It just was already adjusted for you every time. So we did all these things. Belts, crushing it. It's already doubled the size of the business in the last 2 years. So, yeah, just looking ahead, just looking at accessories, maybe some knives, maybe.
I destroy belts so regularly that, I mean, I'm interested. Nate raved about these belts. He's like,
lifetime
these are
warranty.
the belts, man.
Yeah.
And so I need to go get me one of those because I literally, belts, they start to like fold. And I have like the thick leather ones. Just over time, I just destroy them.
Right.
But so talk to me a little bit about, I mean, and you are very much a values-based individual and a company. You mentioned to me when we were off the air about a boys camp in Alaska and sort of giving back. Like, what's behind that? What's that all about?
Yeah, so we started Groove, my wife and I, to provide for our family 100%. It was a side project, and it's grown exponentially more than we ever thought it would. And so at some point when your family's provided for, you're kind of like, what's next? I'm not really I don't measure myself by my bank account. So we families first. It's the first ministry that you should take care of. Secondarily, it's like, okay, outside, once you have margin, what do you get back to? And so we did a lot of kind of inner work and praying, and just realized that, I'm very passionate about men and kind of becoming true men. What does a true man in America mean? It's not toxic masculinity, but it's also not this feminine BS they're trying to.
What is it? Let me pause there. We want to have the time to talk about the boys camp, and I do want to hit that. But what is, when you say I want to develop, for example, boys into men?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think there's well, let me just answer it straight up. A true man, in my point of view, and it's my point of view, is not 100% right, still developing, but it's someone that is willing to sacrifice for others. And so that's ultimately what a true leader and a true leader in general, and men are called to lead, absolutely. So are women, but in the family and in our communities, men have shirked their responsibilities. And because of that, I think we've had the feminist movement. We've had all these things because there has been a void of responsibility and sacrifice by men in our community, in our country. We would rather play video games and look at pornography than actually go do things and pursue a woman, because it's easier. In the society, the libtards out there have absolutely, said that's okay. It's actually preferred. You sit on the couch and you be a nice little man and let your wife lead, and you watch sports. You know what I mean? Nothing against sports, but we have kind of shirked our duty as men. So basically just trying to, again, back to my faith, why was Jesus such a man's man? He did the ultimate sacrifice. He laid down his life for those he loved. I want boys to grow up and lay down their lives for the country, for their families, for their communities.
Sure.
And that's what I'm passionate about.
Do you think we're too far gone?
No, I don't. At a macro level, I'm not trying to save the world. I'm trying to, we have a local group called Dirt and Iron. It's kind of like Boy Scouts without girls. That's what I call it. It's like that non-woke Boy Scout. And we're trying to raise those boys up to do practical things. What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to love a woman? What does it mean to shoot a gun? Why are there guns? Why is the Second Amendment? We kind of go through all
What
this.
is a gun?
Yeah. What is a gun? What's the difference between a shotgun and a rifle? But why is it important? Protection and provision is why the Second Amendment is very important. So anyway, those are the things that we're proactively. But I don't think we're too far gone. That's not my problem. If you think the world's too far gone, you don't focus at home with your family.
You got to
first.
solve the problem in front of you.
You got to do it. You got who do you have influence over?
Right.
Influence those people. If collectively we do that, we change.
So
the
tell me
world.
about specifically the idea of boys camp in Alaska.
Yeah, the boys camp in Alaska is for 12 to 17-year-old boys. They come up. It's kind of the West Point of boys camp. We absolutely teach them practical skills like how to run a boat, how to drive a four-wheeler, how to host a dinner party, all these things, how to hike, how to survive, obviously. And then we tie that to creation. In Alaska, if you can't really be a God denier in Alaska as far as
You
whatever
see it.
believe, man, it is all around you. And so doing those hard things, which we talked about off air, like what is it, teaching your children to do hard things up there is really easy because everything's really hard. So that's that program runs from June and July. It's a 3-week program, but basically. And then we do mentorship throughout the year. We read books. We read a lot of the classics, founding father stuff, Chesterton, stuff like that. So that's kind of what Groove funnels. We have a nonprofit. Groove gives a lot to other places as well, but a lot of the money goes to this boys camp that we're developing in Alaska. So,
Well, that's
in Alaska,
awesome.
It's Alaska because that's where I was born. That's where I'm from. And honestly, I just love it. So we bought a lodge on a private island in a national park. So it's absolutely
That's really cool.
150 miles from the nearest road. You got to fly in. It's pretty epic.
Well, if folks want to learn more about that kind of stuff, because I'm telling you, as a dad, our crew's a little weird because we're outside all the time.
Yeah.
Like we're like, where's a waterfall or some kind of animal we can chase?
Yeah.
Like what's the thing? But there's a lot of parents who say, man, I want to do that. I want to learn about that.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
where can they kind of learn about some of the stuff that y'all are looking into and, the boys camp, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff?
well, honestly, there's no place yet because we haven't launched yet. But
Cool.
But we launched. We bought the lodge last year and then we're renovating. But coming up this fall, maybe I'll come back on. And share.
Yeah, I absolutely.
But I'll
love
tell
that.
you this really quick. You got a second? Do we
Yeah,
have
yeah,
time?
we're
One
going
thing
stuff
I'm
there.
really try to encourage parents to do is that especially dads. A lot of dads weren't raised with fathers that taught them how to change a tire or fish or hunt or
Sure.
go outside and chop wood, whatever the thing is. And so they kind of default to sports because everybody plays sports. But I will tell you that your son, an expert is someone that knows 10% more than you. That's an
Right.
expert.
Yeah.
So your son does not know that you don't know how to change a tire or cut wood or build a fire, right? Get on YouTube, learn, just do it right before and then you learn together, and he will still think you're the most amazing dad because it's not about what you do, it's about the time you spent with him. So that's how I encourage dads.
We did have a situation in my house where we learned basic principles of electricity, and sometimes when they flip the breaker and they get a little excited to turn it back on and my hand's still on the light
Oh, yeah.
switch, we learned those principles. I learned those principles. So I get that, man. But that's cool. And I think it's really encouraging to have, in the culture that we're in, we see the headlines and there's a tendency to want to focus there, right? But really, we're just directionally loud when we do a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, oh, I hate this thing, or I don't. But, there's often folks right in front of you. You
Right.
got your kids.
Right.
You got their friends.
Right.
Like, they're right
Sure
there. And so, our family, we're huge sports folks, but it's very much engaging. It's teaching the discipline. But, like, there is no substitute for seeing God's creation. I mean, going and swimming.
camping. Yeah.
Swimming in a waterfall, man. Like, if you're not swimming, there's so many waterfalls around this area.
Right.
If you can hear the sound of my voice, there are like 17, 18 publicly available significant waterfalls that you can go just goof around in and have some fun.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it makes all the difference in the world.
Best video game.
Well, we're going to take a break,
Reality.
come back for just a little bit, and finish up with Peter Goodwin from Groove Life, and check out a couple more of y'all's text messages. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7.
Cool, thanks.
8 people are in custody in a huge fentanyl crackdown, and more details in the military secrets leak case. Those stories and more at the top of the hour. I'm Jay Harper for Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome back, folks. Cameron Smith filling in for Matt Murphy on the Matt Murphy Show, Super Talk 99.7. Super Talk text line 615-737-9986. I've been here with Peter Goodwin, CEO of Groove Life, and we've been talking about his company that he's building in Spring Hill and their values and how they're dealing with the crazy culture and, you know, just what it means to be a man in society, what it means to raise boys. For a few minutes, I want to talk about just family, right? What's your approach as a father in this culture? You see all this stuff happening, the shootings, the weirdness, like all this stuff happening. Raising kids now, if you wanted to encourage other fathers, what did you tell them?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. I'll tell you kind of what my approach is. My goal is to keep my kids as innocent as long as possible, because once the innocence is lost, it's lost forever. So, so that's an overarching theme. You know, call it naivety or whatever, but we value that. I have young children, so it's not super hard right now. It's going to be more challenging. I think the other thing is just, it's easy to kind of throw a screen at your kid. It's harder to engage. Very hard. Man, I've got 3 girls. Like, I do not want to play Barbies. But right. But back to sacrifice. Like, what does it mean to sacrifice for my family? And in my definition of manhood, that's what the definition is true sacrifice. So, like, looking to sacrifice for my wife and my kids at all times, that is not a natural thing. That is not a natural thing.
I can tell you, it's not.
It sucks a lot of times. But I think, what is the goal? Having a goal for your family and then knowing how to get there is pretty important.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I've tried to encourage other dads is have a goal. Like, what is your mission statement of
your family?
Of your family.
Yeah.
I mean, for the Smith family, I'll tell you, it's to honor God with everything we say and do.
That's good.
Do we fall short of that?
Yeah.
Sure. But, like, that's the goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want our lives to reflect what we believe. And it's not about being the good guys. It's about knowing Jesus.
That's right.
So I've really appreciated it, Peter. This has been awesome. We'll have to have you back again sometime. Dang, man. I mean, people love what you do. So keep it up.
We make good products. We lifetime warranty. We have 200 employees here in Tennessee. So you guys buy from us, you're buying American, and we'll back it up forever. Appreciate you guys.
I appreciate it, Peter. And I appreciate you folks on the Super Talk text line. We're going to be back in the next hour. And ultimately, we will have Cheryl Brown, Williamson County GOP on the line, and we'll talk. This is Cameron Smith in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7.
Yeah, that was great.
It is exactly 1 p.m. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. We're looking at a mostly cloudy sky and 72 degrees. A complete forecast is on the way. The United States today announcing the arrest of 8 people they say are responsible for large amounts of fentanyl making its way into the U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland outlined the flow of chemicals from China to Mexico, where he alleges the country's Sinaloa cartel manufactured the deadly drug and coordinated its transport to America. Attorney General Garland accusing the cartels of disregard for human life on multiple levels.
2 of the defendants tested the potency of the cartel's fentanyl on individuals who were tied down. In another instance, those defendants experimented on a woman they had been ordered to shoot. Instead, they injected her repeatedly with fentanyl until she overdosed and died.
Investigators say classified military documents allegedly leaked by a 21-year-old low-ranking Air Force National Guardsman Jack Teixeira were accessible online for weeks before they became aware of the breach. Some of those documents included sensitive information on Russia's war on Ukraine, as well as surveillance activity on U.S. adversaries and allies. Former Homeland Security official John Cohen says that the U.S. may need to modify its protocols on the relatively wide number of people that it gives access to.
Basically, when most active duty military personnel make it through basic training and begin working in their military occupation, they will receive at the minimum a secret clearance. That means they have the ability, in most cases, to access secret level information, which quite a bit of this information was classified as.
Calls for the Supreme Court to preserve access to the abortion pill mifepristone. The U.S. Justice Department followed a drug manufacturer today to request the High Court step in 1 day before tighter restrictions are set to take effect.
We heard from Danco Labs in their filing to the Supreme Court that one of the interesting side effects of all of this is going to be the mislabeling of the drug. They need to do whole new labels for this drug before they can send anything out. They warn that manufacturing could stop.
That is Ann Flaherty reporting for ABC News. That is the latest news. Weather's on the way. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Welcome back. This is Cameron Smith. I'm filling in for Matt. We just had a great conversation with Peter Goodwin out of there at Groove Life in Spring Hill. It's a cool facility they have down there. It's a school, an old schoolhouse that they've converted into their offices. And I was really interested in his thoughts about the branding thing because it's a big, big, big issue right now. The too big to fail companies are essentially saying, well, we don't really care about you. You're going to still use our product. You're going to be upset for a second. We'll do what we want. We will project our values and the demographic, the consumers that we want, rather than engaging the ones that we have and, frankly, making better products for them. That's a huge problem right now. We're seeing it across the board, and some of them are big enough that they can kind of hold it down and say, well, you can't do anything about us. I've got a column coming out on AL.com talking about this. And
plan something like this large military campaign secret.
We have a secret military campaign, Bell. Is that emerging?
Doesn't sound very secret.
Yeah, it doesn't. And this issue isn't going away. And the reason it's not going away for Bud Light is because their product is easily replaced. That folks are drinking it because they're used to it and they just kind of keep going on with it. But this is a situation where Bud Light, here's a review from Beer Advocate. Bud Light tastes like sugary, musty rice. Delicious.
It's kinder than I would have been.
It smells like college. This was my favorite. This was a liquor store owner in Minnesota. He said, this is one beer that I can honestly say makes me feel like I would rather stay sober and drink water. Okay. But I think this is the problem. And what the left does, what the cultural elite like to do is to say, really this issue is, well, it's that everyone reacting negatively to this is anti-trans. To which I would say, no, that's just not true. That's the easy excuse. That's the easy opt-out, right? Is people are just not comfortable with this, and it's because they're bigots and they're evil and they're awful. No, it's because the vice president of marketing for this company with a brand that is very college, like cheap beer, goofy commercial type drink, doesn't really care about them, doesn't want them. Nobody cares about a couple beers going to somebody who's transgender. They care about folks saying that image of our core constituency, which incidentally is accurate, we don't really want. And that to me is a big problem, right? When you're basically saying our core customer that, hey, has had a long week and wants to kind of just chill out, we need to preach at that person. And that person gets upset about that. They really, really do. And it's okay to recognize that. And I think that these brands kind of do so, ignore this at their peril and say, well, we'll just move along. At some point you can't, because somebody's going to come up with an alternative and an option. And I'm not talking about these like shtick political brands that are solely emerged from controversy. I'm just saying like a different brand that isn't preaching at people. I think the right answer is just to be consistent and honest and treat people well and make good products. And if you do that,
take effect unless the Supreme Court acts.
Unless the Supreme Court acts, man, we're getting wild over here. But that's ultimately where we are with this issue. And I want to set up our next guest heading into the break, and we'll have her join us at around 1:30. We're kind of playing this game right now. We've got the woke, anti-woke, all these different things, but kind of thinking about, when we're talking about identity, who do Republicans want to be? I'll throw a couple things out here that are worth recognizing and discussing. There's some Gallup polling. So this is a really interesting poll as far as I'm concerned, because they've been keeping it for a very, very long time. Let me see, I'll pull it up here. Wow. They've been keeping this poll, the latest information, the oldest, 1975. And ultimately, they've asked a very simple question. It's on abortion. And they've been keeping it, basically taking this poll once for the last several years, once a year, kind of checking in to see where people are. Do you think abortion should be legal under any circumstances, legal only under certain circumstances, or illegal in all circumstances? Now, I understand some of y'all are going to say, well, Cameron, polling is just inaccurate. No, that's not true. There's some very, very good polling. There's some very consistent polling, and some of Gallup's polling has been very good. And on this issue, I think more or less they're spot on, and they've done it for a long time. So even if you say that they're biased or this, the relative numbers in the shift is pretty consistent. Right now, legal under any circumstance has a 35%. That's where 35% of the survey respondents fell. Legal only under certain circumstances, 50%.
It's doubling lending income. Dave Packer, ABC News.
What? We're doubling lending income too. Okay. Illegal in all circumstances, 13%. So I'm sorry, we're having some definite leak through on some things. Legal under any circumstance, 35%. 50% say legal only under certain circumstances. We're talking about abortion here. Illegal in all circumstances, 13%. No opinion, 2%. Okay. Those numbers have shifted markedly. Now, they haven't shifted. Previously, they didn't shift at all. They kind of stuck. They were about the same. It was about, call it 20% illegal in all situations. You're around 30% legal under any percent or any circumstances. And there was about 50% that was just hanging out there in the middle. Well, I did the math, and sort of from when they did the survey in 2013 to 2022, so I took a 10-year sampling, the average percentages kind of fell like this. 2 people had no opinion, which is shocking to me that, or 2% had no opinion on abortion, but okay. 18.8% said no abortion under any circumstances, or it should be illegal under all circumstances. 50.4% said it should be legal under certain circumstances. And 29.1% said legal basically all the time. So when you compare that against the numbers, you see what's happening here. Since the Dobbs decision, we see a significant shift on this issue. And it's something that conservatives need to talk about. I know it's not comfortable, but we need to talk about what's happening because it's going to affect a lot of the political considerations. Basically, you're taking 7 points, shifting it towards the middle of the legal under certain circumstances, and taking 7 points from the middle and kicking it over 6-7 points to the legal under any circumstances. So there is a significant shift on this issue. And Republicans, man, we made some mistakes here. And what I mean by that is not that we were wrong on being pro-life. We just were not prepared to win. We were not prepared for the Supreme Court to come in and say, actually, we're going to leave this up to the states, because what had happened in so many states is Republicans could basically they should message on abortion up to the point of viability, because they knew that the court was going to strike down those laws, that they wouldn't take effect. So that's where they were. And frankly, there were a lot of folks that were there with them who might not even describe themselves as pro-life. Then the Dobbs decision comes through, and trigger laws and other things on these bills take effect. And we've got some very strident abortion laws. Now, as somebody who's pro-life, I think limiting abortion is great. I also think that the mistake that we made was saying, okay, we won, good. Pro-life people won. And so some states have abortion, other states won't have abortion, and that'll be the way it is. That sounds convenient. But what Democrats have done is they've taken this issue and said, look, this is an unreasonable position that these folks are taking. Like, for example, in Florida, the 6-week abortion ban. Well, this is just simply unreasonable. And, imagine if this is your wife or daughter and they're sort of taking this issue and they're using it as a bludgeon in red states, Republican states. And they're heavily messaging in the suburbs, in areas, particularly with educated women. And we don't have a really good response right now. In fact, it's been a lot of radio silence. It's, well, our message was we need to overturn Roe v. Wade, but we haven't really gone beyond that, right? And that's what we've got to figure out is what's the game plan now in a post-Roe v. Wade world, post-Planned Parenthood v. Casey, and how are we going to figure out the path forward? And how are we going to respond to Democrats who are saying, well, these are just patently unreasonable? It's easy as a man to say, well, hey, I'm pro-life. I continue to be pro-life. I think it's, life begins at conception. Life begins at its earliest stages, and we ought to protect it. Even though it's 2023, I will never become pregnant. I will never deal with these issues. And that doesn't mean that I can't be consistent, but we really need, particularly Republican women, to step out and say, no, we're still pro-life. We still believe that life is worth protecting. And oh, by the way, these issues with DCS and how we treat children and what we're doing with kids who are born and parents that don't want them or can't take care of them. We got to have a game plan. And we've got to be on the same with the same moral confidence that we had when we were criticizing Roe and Casey. We've got to have that same confidence now. And I've heard a lot of radio silence, and I think that's really, really, really concerning when we're looking at the politics and sort of where things are going. The other challenge that we're facing, and as we talk to Cheryl Brown coming up at around 1:30, I'm going to ask her this question. We seem to be doing politics by division. We seem to be playing this, who is the righteous one? Who's the righteous Republican? And the other ones are bad. And still doing a lot of infighting at a time when, hey, we really need to unify. We need to say, hey, you're different. We have different perspectives. But, hey, we're on the same team. We don't like what we're seeing from Biden and his leadership and his projection of his values and radical liberal values across the spectrum. Instead, we're like, well, the real issue here isn't that. It's that some of these conservatives are not conservative enough. Well, I think we should talk about that. And we will. But we need to take a break right now. I'm Cameron Smith filling in for Matt Murphy, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
The accused military secrets leaker appeared in court today, and in the wake of some failed banks, at least one institution is doing just fine, thank you. These stories at 1:30. I'm Jay Harper on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
We are rocking out again, but I'm here. In for Matt Murphy. Matt, I think, is doing something that involves fried chicken and whiskey. I don't know. Sometimes I need to learn not to ask. But I do want to talk with you guys, Super Talk text line. First of all, thank you for joining me. I fill in, and y'all have probably got to know me a little bit from Matt's show on Wednesday when I join in. But I really do appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys. The Super Talk text line is a great way to do that. 615-737-9986. And I want to understand a little bit more about and talk about call it the Republican purity culture. And we've seen this with Bill Lee. And what I mean by that is this gun thing. So Governor Lee says, I'd like the legislature to give me legislation on these protection orders. People went nuts. They did. Y'all know it. I know it. As if Bill Lee was channeling his inner Chuck Schumer in talking about gun control. I get it. I'm very much a skeptic on red flag laws, but we still have to have a culture where we can talk about these things, because the basic premise, and if you disagree, text me, tell me, I can see it. The basic premise that somebody who's in severe mental distress should have access, be able to walk in and buy a gun, seems like a thing that should concern us. And I understand it's a slippery slope. I get that one. I very much do, because this could be abused. If your mother-in-law who doesn't like guns can say, well, I think that Johnny is suffering from a severe mental distress, and then Johnny loses his Second Amendment rights, we got a big problem, right? I'll be the first to concede that. But tell me if you think that folks that are in severe mental distress should have access to firearms as a matter of being able to go and purchase them. I think the answer is probably no. And I think that's a conversation that we should have, even if we don't get to the point where, hey, we think this red flag law will work or something like that. We still need to be able to talk about it. And I've seen this Republican purity type stuff percolate that says if you even talk about stuff, if you even entertain the conversation, then you're bad, you're evil. That's anti-American. This process has to work, because this is how we decide things, right? We introduce legislation, folks vote on it. That's ultimately how people who disagree decide on things like laws and stuff like that without violence. I think there are a lot of Republicans who still understand that. But when we have this game where we infight, right? Where the attack is this Republican is the righteous one, this one's not. I'm a Reagan big tent guy. Today, you can call me whatever you want, but that's where I got the ideas. I read Milton Friedman. I read Barry Goldwater. Those are the things that influenced me in terms of the way I look at politics. And I think that's I want to know where that went. And if you guys still believe in it. Because if you don't, and I'm the weirdo, okay, that's fine. But I think there's a lot of folks that really do believe that it's important to have civil debate. I am happy to have a conversation with Justin Jones about his record on common sense gun reform. because there's not a lot of material in that record. And so I've got questions. Oh, common sense gun reform. It's so common that you haven't even managed to introduce legislation explaining exactly what you want. So anytime anyone challenges you, you can say something like common sense. So we don't actually have anything to talk about. (7866) on the Super Talk text line says, red flag laws exclude due process and will be the foothold for gun confiscation. It could be. It could be. I will concede that. That's why I've been suspicious about it. But I think on the same note, we absolutely have to be able to talk about, well, okay, is there another way that we could keep guns out of the hands of the severely mentally disturbed? If there's not, okay. But we still got to be able to talk about it. And I'll tell you what, it is a terrible, even floating the idea of gun confiscation is a terrible idea. They're quite literally firearms, and people are very passionate about it. So anybody that floats any idea of anything other than voluntary, like they do the voluntary gun buyback stuff where they pay you a lot of money for old gross guns and people turn them in. Other than that kind of stuff, that's a terrible idea. And 1541 on the Super Talk text line said, our culture has lost any visible forms of civility. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. And that's what I want to understand is as Republicans and conservatives, we can't lose that, right? We have to be able, particularly in a general election context, to win over those moderate libertarian types in the middle, the folks that kind of vote Democrat, sometimes Republican, other times. Instead, we want to say, well, I don't need you at all. If you don't believe like me, if you don't think exactly like me, then you're the enemy. Well, that's bad politics because I can tell you unequivocally who decides these elections. I know. I've spent a lot of my career in this space, and it's that middle. It's those folks that aren't on the extremes, that don't see this as an open and shut case. And I know, you've got to govern to your base, but you've got to reach the folks that give you the office. And that's where I think we miss. And so I think we've got to be real careful here and real careful where we go with this. And I agree with you that the left does not want to have civil conversations. They want to yell and kick and scream. No justice, no peace. Yell in your face. And you know what that does? Let me tell you what that does. When you respond kindly and directly, you don't have to agree with them on everything. But when you're kind and say, well, this is the process and here's where we are and you're calm, it makes them look like idiots, especially to those moderate voters, those middle of the roads. They're thinking, I wonder who I want to let govern. Is it these crazy screaming people who are telling me I have to accept all of their values? Or is it these reasonable people over here? We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk to Cheryl Brown with the Williamson County Republican Party about some of these issues. I'm very excited to have her. But for now, we got to take a break. Cameron Smith on Super Talk 99.7.
Good afternoon. It is 1:30, and I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. We're seeing mostly cloudy skies and 73 degrees in Music City. Weather, the complete forecast, is on the way. Jack Teixeira today making his initial appearance before a federal magistrate in Boston less than 24 hours after he was arrested for leaking classified national defense information online. Here's ABC's defense analyst Mick Mulroy on potential damage done.
When it comes to the war in Ukraine, I've looked at all of them. I don't think it's going to change the counteroffensive that's being planned that much, but it's always good to have all the information that you're using to plan something like this large military campaign secret.
calls for the Supreme Court to preserve access to the abortion pill mifepristone. The Justice Department followed a drug manufacturer today to request the High Court step in 1 day before tighter restrictions are set to take effect.
The Justice Department and Danco Labs, which is the nation's largest producer of the abortion pill, are asking the Supreme Court for an emergency order to keep the status quo. Millions of women have been using the abortion pill for years, as you know. This court battle playing out in rapid time this week, and now it's down to the wire. At midnight tonight, just after midnight tonight, a series of restrictions on use of that pill will take effect unless the Supreme Court acts.
That's Devin Dwyer reporting. Well, at least one big bank is raking in profits in the wake of recent banking failures.
Just weeks after a pair of bank failures raised questions about the overall health of the banking industry, earnings numbers from J.P. Morgan Chase are defying concerns. The nation's largest bank posting a 52% profit increase in the first quarter of this year and revenue up 25% to a record $38 billion. J.P. Morgan Chase seeing new funds from depositors seeking the safety of too big to fail banks. With higher interest rates, the bank making more money on loan and credit card interest, doubling lending income.
That's ABC's Dave Packer, and that is the latest news. Weather's on the way. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Welcome back, y'all. This is Cameron Smith filling in for Matt Murphy on the Matt Murphy Show. Appreciate all your messages on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. Good show so far today. I've appreciated y'all's participation, and I want to set this call up with Cheryl Brown from the Williamson County GOP a little bit, because I understand that this listening audience is much larger than just Williamson County. But I think these are the kind of conversations that are happening just about everywhere, where the idea of what kind of Republican Party Republicans actually want matters deeply. On the one hand, you have what I'll call the old school Reagan big tent that says, hey, we don't all agree, but we agree enough that we can govern and work together for limited government, free markets, individual responsibility, upholding the rule of law. But lately we've seen the populist thing that basically says, you know what we want? Control of government, so that we can do government things in a different direction that isn't what the Democrats want. That's true. Like there are two very different models. One is let's invite people in. One is we got enough, and we still think we can win. I understand the models. They're different ways of winning. The idea for the populist is, well, I'm going to turn out enough of the base voter that's already there that if I lose the independents, if I lose those voters that have historically swung the elections, it doesn't matter because I'll have enough. Don't know whether that's true or not, but that's the kind of discussion that's happening around the country. It's happening right here in Williamson County, and I've got Cheryl Brown on the line. Cheryl, welcome to the show. Oops. Cheryl, can you hear me? Are you there?
I think you hung up on her.
I can see her there, Belle. I think we're having problems because I see Cheryl, but I don't see. Let's try Cheryl. We will get her back. But this is the conversation that keeps going around, is what are we doing as a party? When it comes to abortion, when it comes to civil liberties, when it comes to, fill in the guns, all of this, what's going on? And that to me is a question. These are questions we got to answer as a party. And it's all or nothing, that we either get our thing or we don't. And I think that's the big problem here. We're still trying to get Cheryl on the line. Let's see. Belle's helping me out. All right, we're going to try again. Hold on, Cheryl. We're coming. Belle's coming specifically. The all or nothing thing, I just don't think it's going to work. And I want to be specific about that. That we get everything we want as conservatives, and we don't have to negotiate at all. We don't have to engage in statesmanship. We can just win and roll. I know it sounds attractive. Like I would love to get my way. So would my children and every other human alive. What we've got to figure out is, are we going to play for the general election, or are we going to play for the primary? That's the truth. That's what this ultimately comes down to. And I think that's where the issue is going to be decided. Are Republicans going to be a primary party, or are they going to be a general? And we can go either way. And y'all know this. We don't have a top-down situation. All right, I think we have Cheryl. Cheryl, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Excellent. Thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
So talk to me a little bit about what's going on in Williamson County. What's the controversy that's kind of spun up down there?
Well, I believe it is what you said earlier. It's about the control. I think that our Republican Party is trying to be hijacked, and they're trying to use the nuclear weapon.
So let's be specific. Hijacked by whom or what?
I would say, people who call themselves they're calling themselves the true conservative. So we are not conservative enough because they have to be the true conservative. But
do any of them have face tattoos? Because that's how you know you're a true conservative, is if you're willing to tattoo conservative on your face. Other than that, I don't know if anyone's a true believer. But continue.
I know. I don't know. I haven't seen the face tattoos. I just have seen the rhetoric of what they have posted, being they're the true conservative, and they're more conservative than those who have been here, and they're calling us establishment because you have established root in your community. You've gotten involved, and you worked hard to, especially, just speaking to those who are Republicans who have worked hard to be Republicans and keep our county red. So I'm part of a Republican organization, and most of the time, I believe what people have forgotten or just don't understand that the Republican mission and purpose is to raise funds to elect Republican candidates and increase the membership.
So what's the pushback there? Like, I can't imagine that most Republicans would want to say, yeah, we would like to, weaken the Republican Party. I mean, what's the counter argument? What is the other side of the coin saying?
Yeah, they're just saying that they're the true conservative. They are more committed than those who are already in leadership. They are not the Reagan Republicans where Reagan says we don't throw our Republican leadership under the bus publicly, right? But what they have done and what I saw before I became the chairman, that was always what was happening. Pretty much, let's throw the governor under the bus. Let's tell the people that we disagree with Governor Bill Lee. Well, why do we have to tell the people that?
Well, what are the? I mean, come on. Like we're talking in generalities. Like, who are the ringleaders here? I mean, who are the? Because I hear this, right? Like I see this. Bill Lee he is just a liberal. Like I've worked for Bill Lee. He's not a liberal. Jack Johnson. Basically, once somebody wins elected office, they're now a rhino. Like that kind of thing.
Correct.
Like who are the ringleaders responsible for this?
I'm
what
a
are we
rhino. That's what I've heard. I mean, many people said they called me a rhino, didn't even know me. I mean, and definitely I would say from what we're getting, most of the posts that we're seeing right now that is coming out is mostly from the Tennessee Stand. That's
Gary Humble and those folks.
That's the Gary Humble folks. I would say the Gary Humble occult team. Because everything that they say about the party is always negative. They throw the Republican Party under the bus. And the Democrat Party covers each other's sin like the blood of Jesus. But you don't get that here,
Well, you just saw that in the legislature. Like all the Democrats came to the defense of Justin Jones, Justin Pierce, and Gloria Johnson. Like they were right there. They may not have even agreed with them, but as far as the public face, they were all on the same team. And I do see this because I've played in this space with sort of the nonprofit political groups. I worked at the Alabama Policy Institute which was a very conservative organization. Worked for the R Street Institute, which was more libertarian leaning. But the challenge that kind of gets put out there is, well, we are ultra conservative, and there's some Republicans that are not. Well, yeah, there are some Republicans that disagree with other Republicans on the issue. The whole point is we probably shouldn't gut each other and let the Democrats win. Is that a fair take?
Exactly. And that is what's happening, which causes me to think and wonder if most of these people are Republicans. Because how do you, if everything that you say about the Republican Party is always negative, then are you a Republican or not?
Yeah, well, and Reagan said, I think it was one of his first rule of conservatism was, "Thou shalt not speak ill of any Republican." And
Exactly.
this is the problem: is there has to be. This is America, folks. There has to be dissent within the party. Like, for example, I'll use Gary Humble as an example. He ran for office. He lost. It's okay. That doesn't mean he's a bad guy. It doesn't mean he's a good guy. It just means he had views. He had people who supported him. He decided to go, and not enough people backed him for him to be successful. And that's okay. But the idea that the folks that don't have that big tent mindset of, hey, let's bring in folks so we can govern, so we can do the whole point of politics, which is enacting legislation, confirming folks, doing the things that we have to do at a high level, I kind of agree with you. It's sort of self-sabotage. So okay, this is happening. How do you respond? What's your case? And obviously those people and a lot of the folks that are there feel strongly, but they make up part of the party. How do you win them back over?
Let me just say what I have experienced and being the leader of the Republican Party of Williamson County. What it boils down to, if you do not kowtow to their way of doing things, then, and I have said this to them, it's a modern day lynching, because what happens is you don't respect what I say, and you don't do things the way I want you to do it. So therefore, you are the rhino, and therefore we need to overthrow you. We need to remove you from office because you don't believe the way I do. That's basically what it boils down to. You can't reason with people who don't want to be reasoned with, because they just want the power and the overthrow to go and attack and put people in place that they believe is more conservative than you.
Well, so then isn't this, let's be real clear, isn't this best just decided in the votes for the party stuff? Isn't that where, okay, so somebody like Gary Humble wants to say, well, I wasn't successful legislatively, but I think I'm a better option than somebody like you. I mean, isn't this the type thing where we should just let it vote and kind of see what's there?
It doesn't matter. One of the things that I'll repeat this. This is what was repeated to me from Gary Humble, and that he said, if Cheryl Brown is the enemy, then Cheryl Brown got to go. And that is the perception, that is the mindset right now, is Cheryl Brown got to go. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you've read or know what I have done as the leader of this county party, I mean, we've brought respect back to this county party.
Hey, well, Cheryl, hang on for me just a second. We've got to take a break right now, but if you can hang on with me for just a second, when we come back, we'll finish this.
Okay.
All right, so I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back. This is Cameron Smith. We only have about a minute. But Cheryl, I need your closing case as to what you want to say.
Well, my closing case is, may the work I've done speak for me. As the Williamson County Republican Party, I've raised nearly $500,000 to support our local, state, and federal Republican candidates, increased membership at 120%, increased event sponsorship at 52%, increased party revenue at 75%.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. We got to go. It's going to be a hard break. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you
so much. Thank you for the time.
See you on the top of the hour.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It is straight up 2 o'clock. Happy Friday. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. It's 73 degrees with a mostly cloudy sky. We'll have a complete forecast for you here momentarily. Jack Teixeira today making his initial appearance before a federal magistrate in Boston, fewer than 24 hours after he was arrested for leaking classified national defense information online. Here's ABC News' Aaron Katersky in Boston on Discord. That's the server where documents were allegedly shared.
It's been popular with gamers mainly, but we've also seen Discord host some more disturbing content. Almost a year ago, it was the mass shooter Peyton Gendron in Buffalo who posted on Discord his whole plan of attack and how he cased the top supermarket in East Buffalo before he went ahead and killed 10 black people out of a racial animus. And he's been, sentenced to life in prison now. But that's when Discord really came into focus of the authorities.
Calls for the Supreme Court to preserve access to the abortion pill mifepristone. The Justice Department followed a drug manufacturer today to request the High Court step in with tighter restrictions that are set to take effect at midnight tonight.
We heard from Danco Labs in their filing to the Supreme Court that one of the interesting side effects of all of this is going to be the mislabeling of the drug. They need to do whole new labels for this drug before they can send anything out. They warn that manufacturing could stop.
That's Ann Flaherty reporting. A two-pronged effort by federal authorities to fight the fentanyl crisis at the source. ABC's Dave Packer fills us in.
As the Justice Department charged more than 24 Sinaloa cartel members, including El Chapo's sons, with trafficking deadly fentanyl into the U.S., simultaneously, the U.S. Treasury Department said it was sanctioning suppliers of the precursor chemicals used to make fentanyl. That includes 2 entities in China and 5 people based in China and Guatemala for allegedly supplying precursor chemicals to drug cartels in Mexico for the production of illicit fentanyl intended for U.S. markets. 8 of the 28 people charged by the Justice Department are in custody abroad, the U.S. offering rewards for others charged in the case.
At the NRA's annual convention in Indianapolis today, former President Trump and his former VP Mike Pence are both on the speaker list.
NRA members here are very, very enthusiastic. They were promised 14 acres of guns and gear, and they've been delivered it. We see hundreds of voters, presumably many Republican voters. Some of them have been lining up from 9 a.m. We anticipate probably at least 3,000 NRA members to pack the room to see Trump and Pence in the same place.
That's Brittany Shepard from Indianapolis. That is the latest news. Weather's on the way. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
We are back for the final hour of the Matt Murphy Show. Thank you all for joining me today. I'm Cameron Smith. I guess sometimes Matt calls and he has things. He says he loves you. I think it's true. He's really enjoyed being here in Nashville.
I think he was talking about me personally.
I don't think that's true.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Are you sure?
Yeah, he loves me.
I see them in those lingering hugs that just last a little too long. Sometimes I walk in the station and there's Matt and Belle just hugging it out, man. And
don't hate. There's no reason for the hate.
And Matt isn't here today. He's enjoying some family time. But man, I do think that the nice thing about this radio station is the folks here very much appreciate the listeners. They appreciate the conversation. Even in the words of Donald Trump, the haters and losers who send very nasty messages on the Super Talk text line from time to time. But they're appreciated too. I need to keep people accountable. Speaking of which, I want you guys to know that I'm fair. 615-737-9986. I still want your input here, but being fair is important. And Cheryl Brown, what's going on in Williamson County, and the sort of part of this that's the Big Ten, right? That's, hey, let's bring people into the fold. No addition by subtraction. She made her case. And I've got Steve Hickey on the line, who's got a different perspective. And I think it's really important that when I'm telling you we need to have these conversations, we actually have the conversations and they're not just one-sided. Steve, welcome to the show.
Yes, sir. Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys.
So tell me what's going on.
All right. So I listened to Cheryl's piece there. And first of all, I've met Cheryl. We've cordially met. Cheryl's a very nice person. I bear no animus against Cheryl.
Well, we can stipulate the positive. Like, what is the controversy here?
Well, and I think it's important to distinguish. This isn't a personality conflict between people and Cheryl. I think there's a fundamental difference of opinion between a lot of voters in Williamson County and the party elites, the people that are in charge of the Republican Party.
That's fair.
There's a very real concern that the party elites do not represent the values and interests of the people in the county.
Well, tell me what that is. I'm in the county, so what is my interest?
Well, let's start out with what's going on in our schools. The
Sure.
ladies over at Monster Liberty have done an immense amount of work identifying and highlighting the issues within the school. We have a curriculum that was approved, and the only way it was approved was through some incredible gymnastics by the state superintendent of education. We have library books in the schools that are not appropriate. We have even though we have the CRT law that was passed, we have teachers that are blatantly flouting that law and saying that they're not going to follow it. So we're trying to get our elected officials to listen to those concerns, but they don't seem to want to listen. Voter integrity. We have a group down here, Tennessee Voters for Election Integrity, that are very concerned about the weaknesses of the voting machines, and whenever they try to.
Whoa, you mean here in Tennessee, like in Williamson County, people? Yeah. You're concerned that
That's
our
right.
voting machines aren't secure?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
So the help me connect this back to what we were just talking about within the party infrastructure. I'm assuming it's, hey, Cheryl Brown represents sort of the existing political infrastructure. Is that kind of the thing? Like, help me understand that.
That pretty much. So the Republican Party exists to give people of a like mind a place where they can come, they can choose who they want to represent them, and then get those people in office, and those people will do what their constituents want.
Sure.
What we're seeing is a party that they want our votes. They want us to show up at the general elections. They don't want us to show up at the primaries. They don't want conservatives to show up at the primaries and agitate for more conservative Republicans to make it through the primary. But they want us to show up on election day, keep Tennessee red with the plus 26 for Trump, but they don't want people to participate in the primaries, and they don't want them to participate in the
don't want who to participate. Like, I mean, literally, like, I'll use Gary Humble as an example. He ran against the Senate Majority Leader. Like, he absolutely did participate, and he lost. So, like, is that what you're talking about? That kind of thing?
Well, we want the ability to participate. Yes, we want the ability to participate in that, and we want the party to give us a place where our views are going to be heard. And over the last few years, we have encountered a party that is sometimes openly hostile to our side of the party. Cheryl made several accusations, and I would just ask the people listening, take a little bit of a look at the Republican Party. Take a look, first of all, at where the party has spent their money. Have they spent it on candidates? Have they been supporting Republican candidates?
But back up a little bit, Steve. Help me understand. Like, okay, and I'll use the Gary Humble Jack Johnson race as a good example, right? So nobody prevented Gary Humble from running, and he ran and he lost. And like Cheryl is, to the best of my knowledge, elected, right? And so, she's. You can run against her, and you can see if you can win. Like, that's how we sort these things out, right?
And that is what we're doing now. We have a coalition of grassroots groups in Williamson County that have banded together, and we are supporting a slate of candidates for the upcoming Williamson County Republican Party reorganization election on April 18th at the factory in Franklin. We have run a positive, forward-looking campaign on what we would like the party to look like going forward.
But what happens if somebody if I disagree with, let's say, for example, I think the elections are secure in Williamson County, and I disagree with you. How are you going to get somebody like me to the table on an issue where we might agree, right?
So what we advocate for is a big open tent, like you said. We want a free market of ideas, and right now that really doesn't exist within the Republican Party in Williamson County. If you're a conservative concerned about the schools, if you're a conservative concerned about election integrity, if you're a conservative concerned about the federal government overreach, if you're concerned about mandates being imposed upon us by the federal government or the state government, you really don't have an opportunity to speak in Williamson County and have your voice heard by the county party.
But you're literally talking to me about that right now, on the biggest signal in the area. Like,
exactly.
But my point is,
it's hard to get that signal out there.
Who is muting people? Like, I understand that you say it's hard. Well, I mean, you can raise money, you can use social media, you can do all. It's like, who specifically is stopping you from being able to talk about what you're interested in?
The party has acted as a Praetorian Guard to protect the incumbent politicians here in Williamson County and prevent grassroots groups like myself from really having much of a say in what happens here.
Okay, well, I mean,
that is the reason why you have these various grassroots groups that have popped up, because the party has not given people an opportunity to have their voices heard.
And so your answer, I think, is consistent with the question I asked Cheryl, and she kind of didn't answer it, this is just a matter of elections, right? Like, if you want to have more say in what goes on, you're challenging so that you can get that say. Is that a fair way to characterize it?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I'll tell you that this stuff right here, and you're talking to somebody who has worked in politics at a high level, worked on a lot of conservative priorities, moved legislation, defeated stupid regulation. Like, I've worked at this stuff, but this is why people hate partisan politics, right? Because
I agree.
Is this hand slappy, like, you don't respect me, you don't respect me, we don't like each other. How do we get past that so we can focus on, well, we definitely know we're not Democrats? Because that's where I'm concerned is, on the local level, it's one thing, but this kind of extends all the way to the federal level of, okay, we need to be able to bring in enough folks to the fold to get to a majority so we can govern, so we can win an election. How do we get there?
Well, like you said, I think we need to. I think we need to come together. I think Cheryl's opponent, Tracy Miller, has articulated a forward-looking, unifying message, and I'd like people to give it a look. If people want to go to www.williamsonconservatives.com, they can take a look at the Vision 2023 slate of candidates, what their platform is, and we encourage people to ask questions. We encourage people to ask questions on why the convention that was scheduled for March 30th was moved 3 weeks later when there was a suitable venue that could have held 5,000 people the night of the 30th.
Yeah, and I actually love this, by the way. Like, I love debate. I love say, hey, find out, have the discussion, engage one another, and then let the cards fall where they may in terms of an election. And I wanted to make sure, and this is a big deal to me, that if I'm giving somebody on one side of the issue a chance to talk, I want to give you as well. So I appreciate you being on, Steve.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So, folks, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And this is in Williamson County. You got a ton of resources, a ton of folks who are very Republican-leaning, who know, for example, that Joe Biden is not the right guy for president. They're generally very supportive of the U.S. Constitution. They want solid education for their kids. I love Williamson County schools. I live there. I'm from Nolensville. I talk about Nolensville all the time. But when we make it about this partisan hand slappy stuff, people just hate it. It's where people don't. I mean, I've been to a lot of rubber chicken dinners, and you know, some of you on the super text line have talked about party before politics or all this stuff. I get tired of the Republican Party and Democrat Party because I think this idea, this is where Democrats have an advantage, because Democrats think the idea of collective action, collective bargaining, doing things together is a lot easier for them. It's more natural. For us, we like to be individuals. We very much are. The individual is the power unit in our politics. And so what we've got to do better is learn how to work together when we disagree and not immediately try to grab the steering wheel and jerk it over in our direction and say, hey, okay, how do we work together? Because people matter. People matter a lot. Political parties really don't. And I think what's happening in a lot of Republican circles, and I see this all the time, oh my goodness, the amount of time we spend talking about who's a rhino and who's not. If I have to hear Susan Collins, Mitt Romney, Lindsey Graham, pick your favorites, oh, well, they're that, whatever. Guess what? In the Senate, they're fairly reliable Republican votes. Yeah, you're going to lose Susan Collins on some gun stuff and maybe some abortion stuff, but you're going to have her on a lot of other things. And the answer, and the thing that I put forward to people who like to call them rhinos, go ahead, but would you rather have a Democrat? Think about that. Would you rather that instead of Susan Collins, you get a Democrat who's going to vote against you a whole lot more? Because your option was not to have a Tennessee Republican or an Alabama Republican. Your option is to have Susan Collins or a Democrat. So when you decide the rhinos and the folks you don't like, okay, I hear you. And what I've long said to conservatives is, let's get the right people in place. Let's get the folks that can bridge those gaps, because guess what? I don't want to win just conservatives. I want to win everybody. And I know you can't get there, but I mean, I'll tell you what, when I see the electoral maps for Reagan and I see somebody that united the country behind a vision that was basically liberty, it wasn't perfect, but it was pretty dang good. And I think that's where we need to find ourselves, is how do we bring people together? There's a kid's book called Stone Soup. We'll talk about it after the break. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7.
More information on that shooting of the shoplifter at a Nashville Walgreens, and former VP Mike Pence speaks out at the NRA convention. These stories coming up at 2:30. I'm Jay Harper on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Well, we're back, and it's the final hour of the esteemed Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith. I really do appreciate you joining me. You can find me on Twitter at @DCameronSmith, @DCameronSmith, where you can yell at me. And it's okay. It's okay. That's part of the discussion. And we want to have a discussion. You can catch me for the last part of this hour on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. For those of you online who have been watching me devour some kind of various meat-looking thing, I make my own beef jerky, and it's delightful. And that's what I've been kind of munching on. If you use flank steak and cut it against the grain, it's excellent. But when you're on from noon to 3, you get kind of hungry. So that's what I'm eating. They're not dog biscuits, but I don't know. They're probably a few tasty dog biscuits. I do want to talk about, I mentioned before we went to the break, Stone Soup. This was, I think it was a 1948 Caldecott Award winner for children's books about soldiers returning from war. And I won't spoil it for you. It's worth getting. It's a couple bucks on Amazon or whatever. But the idea was these folks were just sort of traumatized, and they didn't want to come out of their houses, and they faked being sick and poor and all this stuff. And these soldiers coming back from war wanted to get them to come out and be a part and celebrate and engage. And they did it a little bit at a time by something unrelated to what the soldiers actually needed. It was making stone soup. And the villagers were like, you can't make soup out of stones. And they said, well, let's make a fire and bring a pot and fill it with water and put 3 stones in it. And then we'll add carrots and celery and beef. And pretty soon they had a roaring party, and it was wonderful. I think that's kind of where we are on a lot of this partisan politics stuff, is everybody's a bit shell-shocked right now. Trump, very polarizing, positive, well-loved in Republican circles, well-hated in Democratic circles. And even before Trump, Obama, who was going to be the great uniter, did the opposite. We just have kind of fallen into our corners, and I'm seeing that within the Republican Party, and it's really bad for conservatism. It just is. I understand that when you look at other folks that have different views, they may not be like you. And I saw one on a super text note, again, 615-737-9986, was talking about the problem from people moving in from California and other places and maybe not being as traditionally conservative as Republicans who are already here. I hear that. I have a lot of neighbors that probably fit that description. Again, my question is, would you rather move them over into the Democratic column, or would you rather welcome them into the Republican Party? And then we just have a disagreement over 1 or 2 issues. That's okay. We got to get over this idea that for you to be Republican, you must agree on everything. And there's one list, and that's it, and we must have complete loyalty. You know who does stuff like that? The Chinese Communist Party. That's their mindset on politics. Yes, you can disagree as long as it fits the narrative of the Chinese Communist Party. As long as everything is preordained and correct and well manicured. No is the answer. That's not how we should operate within the Republican Party or in politics generally. And we see this from our friends on the left. You will not only adhere to a certain speech code, but I am entitled to your perspectives and viewpoints. And we hate that. That's all the backlash about the Bud Light stuff, is somebody preaching at you. When we say woke, that's what we mean. Is somebody preaching at us and telling us so frequently, here are the approved virtues and here's what you ought to be. And when folks don't feel like they want that, they get kind of mad. And our answer, folks push back on me and say, well, you want to just be nice? You want to compromise values and morals to be inclusive? No, absolutely not. I know truth from a lie. I know right from wrong. As for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. That's how we're going to do it. So I'm not confused, but I do know that I will be kind. And where I can work with somebody and they will work with me to advance an issue I care about, I don't know, border security. That's a good one. That one's kind of fallen to the back burner in Washington. Then guess what? I'm going to work with them. And if they disagree with me on guns, but agree with me on border security, I'm going to work with them on border security. There's nothing that compromises my values and morals because I know how to work with people. And so this hardcore, either you agree with everything or we're enemies and I'm going to fight you, that is something that Satan would say. Engage the violence. I mean, it literally, this is going to sound nice and dorky, it's like the Emperor from Star Wars. Let the hate flow through you. Good, good. No, we don't want to be like that. Don't let anger twist you so that you become like the thing you hate. And if the answer is, well, I hate the left jamming stuff down my throat, the answer can never be, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fix it and jam it down their throat. Let's not be like that. We got to take a break. We got about a half hour left in the show. And again, great conversation today. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7.
Good afternoon. It is 2:31. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. We'll have the weather for you in just a couple of minutes. Metro Nashville Police Homicide Unit detectives are continuing to investigate the self-defense claim of an East Nashville Walgreens team leader who shot a suspected shoplifter in the store parking lot on Gallatin Road Wednesday night. The wounded suspected shoplifter is 24-year-old Trevansha Ferguson. She was 7 months pregnant. The baby wasn't injured by the gunfire, and she and the baby are in critical but stable condition at a local hospital. Store team leader, 21-year-old Metarius Boyd, was told by another employee of Ferguson and another woman putting items in their car that they hadn't paid for. Boyd said when he approached the women, he was sprayed with mace. He then pulled his weapon and began shooting, saying he was in fear of his life. The investigation continues. He's cooperating with detectives, and the district attorney will ultimately determine whether Boyd will face any charges. Former Vice President Mike Pence addressed the NRA Leadership Forum in Indianapolis a little bit ago, delivering a strong message for President Biden and the left-wing Democrats he says are seeking to trample Americans' Second Amendment rights by pushing for increased gun control.
Tired of the excuses, the predictable blame shifting, the pointless calls for gun control against law-abiding Americans.
That is the latest news. Weather's on the way. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
And we're back. We're running out of time. But I'm glad you've chosen to spend your time with me this afternoon on the Matt Murphy Show. Matt's running around doing family things and hopefully having a wonderful time. A lot of these issues that we're talking about today, I mean, this is tough. In civil society, we disagree. We're so fried out, strung out right now because of the social media echo chambers we're in. We only hear things that tell us that we're good and correct. And really, that's just because there's a computer algorithm basically bouncing stuff back in our faces. I also want to directly hit on the nose this notion of, well, Cameron, you're just asking us to lay down and let the Democrats run over us. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't think that you have to be a spineless, squishy guy or gal just because you're kind. For example, this whole dust up with Justin Jones, Justin Pearson, and Gloria Johnson over their commandeering of the State House floor that we've talked about for, a week and a half now? Made national headlines. We gave all these folks a platform that they never would have otherwise have. Unforced error by Republicans. But the real issue here is how you fight back and how you push back on what's happening really matters. For example, Cameron Sexton and the Republicans in the House, in welcoming back Jones and Pearson, should put a resolution on the floor saying, look, we want to make sure you know your voice isn't silenced, so we want to have a resolution on the floor regarding your gun legislation that you had introduced before you were expelled so that we can highlight and discuss that so that you know that you weren't being silenced over your perspectives on guns and the legislation that you had introduced to push for, quote unquote, common sense gun control, gun reforms. The text of that resolution would be very simple. It would be a blank page. Because the truth was, they had not introduced comprehensive gun legislation. They hadn't introduced gun legislation at all. So when they're calling for common sense gun reform, it's an ever-moving target. So this is not about letting Democrats run over you, and like they just did in the Tennessee legislature. This is about pushing back in a smart way so that they're the ones on the defensive. So they have to explain to their voters, well, why haven't I really pushed for gun legislation? Why haven't I tried to do this stuff? And the answer is because they want to talk about it instead of trying to actually legislate, because then you would have to push it through. You would have to have votes, and you'd realize that the votes aren't there for the ideas that you want to have. And that's quite upsetting. I understand that. I've worked in Congress when Democrat majorities had control. I've lived in Washington, D.C. in a super minority. It's not fun, but it's still the process. And when they cloture you and they just say, we are going to limit debate, they can do that because Republicans have the vote. That's not somehow you are entitled to speak indefinitely on your legislative initiatives. There's a process. But the fact that you haven't even really pushed legislation on the topic that you are so zealously discussing tells me that you are more of a person that wants the platform than somebody that wants to address a problem. And Republican leadership in Tennessee should not be afraid to point that out about Democrats. If Democrats are bringing ideas to the table, particularly ideas that can attract significant Republican votes, then we should absolutely have that debate. We should absolutely have that discussion. But the idea that, well, if Justin Pearson and Justin Jones and Gloria Johnson, anybody for that matter, can be Republicans too, want to just go down and pontificate about whatever, whether it's gun control or what Justin Jones did, which was basically tell Republicans that you're all racist authoritarians. He can do that on Twitter. You can go to Good Morning America. There are plenty of places to talk about your feelings and what you're upset about. That's not leadership. That's not brave. That's just, I have opinions, and like every other American, feel like my opinions are the best. And that when people like them, then I am valuable and good. That's ironic coming from a columnist who literally puts his opinions out there. But I don't derive my value from how people respond to that stuff. I understand some of you love the things that I have to say on the radio. I can see you on the super text line, which is 615-737-9986, by the way. And I see that. Some of you love it. Some of you are like, Cameron, I appreciate you being here. Some of you are like, Cameron, you are the worst. And that's okay. I put my opinions out there for public consumption, so guess what? I'm going to take my lumps. And I appreciate the encouragement at the same time. But the idea that our legislative process should be about anything other than legislation and oversight of our executive branches of government is ridiculous. It's become like a B-list celebrity game where we talk about how virtuous we are and how much we care. But while we're talking about common sense, gun reform, or feeling common sense anything, tell me what you want to do. Show me the specifics. For example, I think something that we should definitely consider in Tennessee, if we're serious about mental health and helping people. So as a foster parent, I'm therapeutic foster trained through Youth Villages, which is an agency that works with DCS. But there's other kids in other areas that aren't considered part of that therapeutic foster care system. And so that's helping them with their trauma, right? That's affording them resources so that they can work through really traumatic circumstances. Well, every kid that's in state custody has had really traumatic circumstances. And so it'd be a really good idea to afford those resources to all those kids. There's an idea. It's something you can turn in legislation tomorrow. All right, we care about mental illness. Great. How about dollar for dollar tax credit on your federal taxes when you spend it with a licensed therapist? It's a starting point. I'm not saying it's the best idea. I'm saying that, okay, cool. Right now it gets kind of lumped under general health care and you can't really deduct it up to a point. I'm not going to get into all the policy weeds, but the point is Marsha Blackburn could introduce that tomorrow and say, well, let's talk about it. Let's see if we debate. We'll amend this. We'll make it right. We'll look at the revenue numbers. We'll figure out what makes sense. Okay. That's fine. That's a concrete idea. What's happening right now is we're shadowboxing. That Democrats are saying, we care so much. No justice, no peace. Slogan here, slogan there. This is how we feel. And Republicans right now are silent. And we shouldn't do that. And I think that's a big part of our problem, is that instead of pushing back in a smart way, Republicans right now are just silent. Like, maybe it'll go away. Maybe Democrats will stop hammering us on guns. Maybe they'll stop hammering us on abortion. No, you have to have the moral courage to stand and deliver and not be afraid to just engage them directly. And I understand armchair cornerbacks that are like, well, you know, I see one right now. I see you, Ray. Mitt Romney. I mean, I don't know. Mitt Romney may have hurt Ray. I don't know that. But guess what? That's not a thing. Like, Mitt Romney occupying your headspace, Joe Biden occupying your headspace. That's not governing. That's not doing anything useful. We need to be moving these conservative ideas. I love the discussion earlier with Steve, and Steve saying, hey, we got to pay attention to curriculum in public schools. Yep. I think that's a great idea. We should be discussing that, putting on the front burner. But this idea that we're going to be silent. No, we need to be smart. We need to push back. We need to contend for the future too. We need to contend for the culture. If we're not, and I've said this, and this is a weird thing to say, so listen up. But you know how we say, well, the left is coming for your kids. With media and things and screens, they're in your home and they're coming for your kids. And to which we say, Well, we have to protect our kids. That is the wrong answer. You're saying, well, Cameron, you're saying that we don't protect our kids? No, you have to go after their kids. Because when we're talking about going after the kids, we're fighting for the future, right? The hearts and minds of the future, we need to engage today. And so if folks that don't share our values as conservatives, as Christians, as people who think America's pretty great, are coming and trying to teach our kids that we're wrong and we teach them, we actually need to teach their kids, like, hey, there's a different way. And if we're always playing small ball, if we're always playing protect the backyard, make sure we get real comfortable in our space, it's not a matter of will we lose. It's just win. And we got to do so much better. We also need to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7.
More analysis on the potential damage created by the military intel leak, and President Biden weighs in on the case from Ireland. We've got details on these stories and more coming up at 3. I'm Jay Harper on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
And only minutes left. The suspense is killing me. But we're heading into the drive with Brian Wilson. I'm Cameron Smith. I've been filling in for Matt Murphy. And, man, it has been a really enjoyable show. We've certainly, one of the most interesting things was delving into the drama in the Williamson County GOP. My remaining message to them, realize people are watching and they may not want to be part after seeing you bludgeon each other. Just vote already. Make your case. Let the vote sort it out. And try to bring a lot of people into the fold. Both sides seems to want to be Big Tent. That's great. Let's bring them in. I think that's really, really important. We had Peter Goodwin here from Groove Life. If you missed that first hour, it was actually great to have somebody who's building a company right here in Tennessee, down in Spring Hill, cool company, talk about what it means to engage the customer, deal with all the drama and the culture right now, that sort of thing. And we've talked a little bit about not backing down, that we need to keep pushing on this stuff. And when the Justin Joneses and Justin Pearsons of the world call everybody all kinds of names, we need to say, show us your gun legislation. Engage the process. Let's talk. Show us a piece of legislation you can put on this floor right now that isn't just a messaging bill, that could get the votes, that can move us in a better direction as a state. Then we'll talk. But the process, the legislative process, we need to keep our eye on that. The regulatory process, all that boring stuff. That's where government happens. That's where governance happens. It doesn't happen on social media. It doesn't happen on your Twitter feed. Happens in that building right over there. Downtown Nashville. Thank you for your time. You can find me at DCameronSmith on Twitter. Engage. I'll be back next week in the morning. I think I'm joining you on Tuesday from 9 to noon and Friday from 9 to noon. Heck, I'll probably show up on Wednesday, too, to join with Matt. Brian Wilson is next. I'm Cameron Smith, and this is Super Talk 99.7.
It is straight up 3 o'clock. Happy Friday. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. We're looking at a mix of clouds and sun. Currently 72 degrees on Music Row. Weather and traffic are up next.